Yo, what is up, everyone? It's Mini TV here, coming at you again with another video. Today, I've got something different. I say that every video, but this one is definitely something different. It's going to be hopefully a change and a start to another kind of playlist and video series where it's more general kind of principles and general topics that will hopefully be able to be applied almost every game you play. Because before, it's been very hero specific or hero guides, and I want to do some more general that can benefit everyone at every MMR bracket. So, and this video is really going to be talking about and focusing on how to turn winning lanes into winning games. Basically, how do you get up from an advantage from the laning stage to end up making it a stomp for your team? So, without further ado, guys, let's jump into it. So, guys, this is the game I wanted to show you, we were talking about. So normally when it comes to lanes, starting off with, the reason why you'd ever kind of normally win a lane sort of so handedly is normally for one of two reasons. Obviously one can be outplay, but that's normally rarer the higher you go, and but normally or mainly it's because of draft. Your lanes are just simply better because the heroes just match up better, and in this case we kind of do a mixture of both actually. In this game AM ended up like first picking, which allowed me to pick a more or a better suited support. I ended up picking Sansa this game. Pretty nice against the Phoenix obviously, and also gives us some kind of abilities that if Legion jumps on Animage I can silence and hopefully you can survive the duel, yada yada yada. Decent team fight as well. Just briefly talking as well, I think Sansa's a great hero pick this patch. Got buffed recently in the D patch and it's good against heroes like Phoenix that I've been popping off recently. But in this game, so not only is our draft kind of good, we also had a pretty 5-head play in terms of how we laned. So normally it would have been Underlord, Tiny in the off lane, and me and Antimage in the safe lane. But we want to play in this lane for two different reasons. Firstly, Undying against two strength heroes, Tiny and Underlord, is going to be really rough for him. And not only that, but AM doesn't want to be playing against a Legion commander. So we ended up running top, which is ideal as well because I get to play against two melees as a silencer. So it worked out really well, and this is the reason why we ended up having such a strong start in the lanes, particularly in our lane. And bot as well is quite handy because obviously Underlord gets to play against a melee, Tiny gets to play against a sort of a squishier hero as well in terms of for burst, for example. And obviously Viper's playing against Magnus, so that's just kind of goes even. It's just really the side lanes here that really get abused for the most part. I'm not going to focus too much on the lanes because we do end up winning, and I want to talk more about really what to do after the lanes have gone well. In this case, you're just going to sort of see me and Undying kind of just run around each other, and I normally get the better trade because really I'm range versus melee. It works out for him a little bit that he has Orb of Venom as well, but because we're in the offlane, sometimes he can overcommit like this and can end up giving away his life as we see here. So, and this is just kind of what happens over and over again. AM doesn't really miss too much CS, and Undying can't pressure me because I'm in the offlane. If it was the other way around, then I wouldn't be able to do much here. Get a nice pull off here as well, and again, like this Undying is just not having a fun game really, losing all his mana to AM, and getting right clicked from me as well. So overall, not too fun. And this is kind of just what happens when it runs back and forth. But AM is CSing better than the PA because they're 1v1, and I'm just using my regen, and yes, he's doing a lot of decay stacks, but it's so much better when you play against an Undying to really split the two people around. Obviously, I ended up dying, but we trade as well. I had low regen and low everything, so I was happy to give away my life. Obviously, Undying normally his strength is that he's able to sort of double decay, but if you split away, his partner and himself, he's a lot easier to deal with, as we see here. And obviously I end up buying the Windlays as well, so you can't sort of chase me down as easily as before. And I am still happy to see us. Again, I'm just making sure I kind of stay away from the double decay stacks. We end up giving him the first double decay there, but by the time it happens, he ends up overcommitting for it and dies. So all good. And like now you're starting to see it's only 4 minutes in and we're like about to be 1,000 gold ahead. Bot lane is kind of going even, but that ends up trading as well the longer this game goes on. Underlord in the safe lane is just kind of nice as well. Undying has no TP, and so now we're like 2v1, and AM can CS everything by himself. PA steals the bounty room, but you know, not too big of a deal. So AM obviously like is having absolute free farm, and you know this lane gets farther and the more goes on here. We kill the Undying a bit more. I'm just going to skip ahead because, like I said, the main part of this video was us really kind of talking about what to do when lanes are kind of started to be won. I think we killed the Undying one more time, and now's the time where really the laning stage is starting to fall apart. It's the 7-minute mark, and if you see pro games and higher tier games, this is the moment where lanes start to. It's no longer the laning stage. You know, people rotations are happening, things are happening elsewhere. You know, we're not so focused on initial the lanes. Also, there's neutral items as well. So the first thing that I think is really important to make sure that you can kind of carry over the advantage you've had from the laning stage is really to be aware of rotations and forfeits. And by that I mean obviously rotations in that, you know, say one of the supports might go to the off lane, or the position 4 might come to the safe lane, for example, and run a tri lane. You know, if both side lanes are losing, it's a lot better to consolidate one lane than to carry on losing both. And that's kind of what happens here. Undying ends up going bottom, and PA then forfeits the lane. And by forfeit, I mean just, you know, going into the jungle and retreating. So the first thing that you really need to really be wary of is obviously like the threat of the rotation. In this game, it's not that much of a threat. Yes, Undying gets close, but you know, it's an Undying. You know, if there was a different support, it might have been something worse. They still end up killing the Underlord, but they trove the Undying. But overall, that's kind of a win for the enemy team, obviously. So you need to be wary of rotations. My team should have been more aware of it. Maybe I could have TP'd regardless. In this case, obviously, PA returns back to lane and realises actually that she can't stand up against the anti-mage, and again, she would have liked to have just sat in the jungle. Again, there's more kind of action, and you know, this is just what happens really when you're this far ahead and they try and contest the lanes. But yeah, that's kind of the first main point, obviously. And I mean, it didn't matter too much, but if you kind of look back to, you know, we were 2k ahead, they end up getting this kill on the Underlord, and it swings to like 1,000 gold in the end. So like, you know, and then so now they're like, they've just reduced their the deficit by about 1,000 gold or so. And so you've got to be really wary of the rotations. You know, whether, and this also going to happen to the mid lane. In this case, you know, both mid lanes are happy farming. You know, Viper's hitting jungle creep, so it's the Magnus. But you know, sometimes other game, maybe you're playing against a Quaswex Invoker, and he'll look to kind of destabilize the lanes that are going well for you. So the first thing you need to do is really be wary of rotations and to missing calls. So obviously make sure you're calling missing and be ready to respond to any lane that gets kind of heavily focused on by the enemy's resources. The next thing I think is important to mention, as I just kind of fast forward the kind of madness that happens top lane, is really just to identify. I probably went a bit too far actually, because there's another thing I want to talk about. Is to start really to identify like timings and the identity of both teams. Generally speaking, obviously, if both teams are happy to kind of fight and there's kind of pushing potential from both teams, the one that goes ahead in lanes is just going to deathball and roll over the enemy team, whether it is just grouping up and taking towers, for example. So say this carry, instead of an anti-mage, is the Lycan, for example. The game is very simple, you know, just pushing towers, grouping up, and there's not much the enemy team can do because they can't team fight you because they're behind, and they can't, you know, delay towers because you have pushing. In this game, it's a little bit different. We have an anti-mage, doesn't really want to group up, doesn't want to sort of take team fights. And the enemy team have decent team fight as well. They have Magnus, they have Phoenix, and they have Undying. So in games like this, where even though we are 3,000 gold ahead in terms of the lanes, we can't just steamroll from the lanes into taking towers and taking team fights because we just don't have the team for it. In this game, we still have to kind of just wait for AM to farm, and we need AM to kind of get online, and that can only come from just farming and just sitting in his lane. So just kind of identify like what your team is and what it needs really to perform. Because in some games, if you're 3,000 gold ahead, you can just all group in one lane and just pressure towers and death blow over. In this game, it's a bit different, and so we have to change and adapt because of it. So right now, obviously, AM, is having a complete free farm. I no longer need to be in this lane. I'm not focused really of just sort of pressuring this tower. AM is farming as he should and as he wants to. So I'm going to try and help and move to the other parts of the map to try and be useful. And this really comes into the third point I want to talk about, really, which is warding and pressure. So first off, like you can see the kind of two wards that I've already placed. One here to kind of protect the AM. This one is to kind of watch out for people farming the jungle, and the one I placed here as well, which will pressure the tower and also kind of put pressure anyone farming the triangle as well. And this is exactly what we do. We run over, try and force the Magnus out of it. And just with this little play is what's important, because the enemy team also are happy to kind of sit back and farm, particularly the Magnus, because that's a lot of the games will be dictated through the mid lane. So if the enemy team is kind of a farmer mid laner, which in this case Magnus is, then the rest of the game will kind of fall on that as well. So I don't want to allow Magnus to just, even though we've won the side lanes, to just sit in his jungle and farm, and let him able to do that. And with this TP, what's happening here is that Viper's TP'd bottom to sort of respond to the kind of dive that's happening bottom, and I'm TPing mid, because the third point I want to talk about is really applying pressure, whether it be through running at enemy heroes in the jungle or through pressuring towers. In this case, I didn't need to be bottom because Viper was TPing, so I sort of take his role of pressuring mid tower, and then it forces Magnus to TP mid, and all the while, we ended up killing the Undying and the Legion, and I ended up getting level 6 mid as well. So it was a good trade altogether. And all the while, obviously, AM is pressuring top. Underall is still pushing in bot, and I was pushing in mid. So we're applying pressure, and we are, pressuring the towers on multiple lanes. And because all lanes have gone well, we can do that, and the enemy team can't respond to us. And that's what's kind of important to know. Like, just a general kind of easy rule of thumb here, is that the enemy team, because we've won the lane, the enemy team doesn't like the status quo. They don't like things happening the way they are. If we're winning top, we're winning mid, we're winning bottom, something needs to happen from the enemy's point of view to change this game up. Because if nothing changes, then we will carry on building our lead, even in the lanes, if everything is the same. So, that's kind of goes back to the first point, where they'll start rotating, looking for ganks because they want to switch it up. And it's always really your job to respond to that if you're the team that's winning lanes. Because a really important factor is that you never want to be trading if you're the team ahead. Whereas if you're the team behind, trading is fine. So, for example, if you're trading, if you're like pressuring if the enemy team is pressuring your safe lane tower, you're not happy just to trade the tier 1 because you're ahead. They shouldn't be getting anything for free. And just kind of keeping that in mind going forward. So another kind of thing I wanted to talk about a bit as well is just kind of playing greedy with items as well. In this case, I'm buying like a null talisman. I am rush the battle fury, and when lanes go this well, you can kind of get away with it. Normally, you might need some build up items on the anti mage, maybe a wraith band or two to sort of help him secure him in lane. I won't have the money for items like null talisman. Brazier could have also worked. I was just playing a bit greedy. I like the mana regen because I don't have arcane boots. So things like that, like if you're having a really good game, maybe you can rush a Midas, depending if you play carry or these different things. If lanes are going well, it applies to mid lane as well. Maybe it's an Exalt Evoker and his slide lanes are doing fine. Then maybe he can go for a Midas because it's not going to get punished. Just remember, when items are very situational, and that situation is depending on if lanes are going well, then you can switch it up. So another point here really is, again, I'm kind of still pressuring the enemy team. Like if they're forfeited a lane, in this case the Magnus is forfeited mid, PA was forfeiting top, and I'm just trying to annoy them. And you saw me take the hard creep there, and it does one or two things. It puts pressure on the carry or the core farming the lane, but also forces rotation. You saw Phoenix run over to me run over to me here, and that obviously leads a sort of deficit or a weakness somewhere else, which was bot undying by himself. So this is another point I want to talk about. Like, so we're 6k ahead. We're so far ahead in this game. And AM has his Battle Fury now, so he's online, he can do whatever he wants. And we're just going to be really converging on the towers that are remaining. Obviously, bots been pushed in, they had a lot of resources pulled up top, so we couldn't really take top easily. And so the remaining outer tower is mid. Now, the execution here is kind of pretty poor. I didn't get the global silence off before the skewer, and we end up diving behind a tier 2, and as a result, both of my teammates end up dying. So it was the right kind of play, just really poor execution, really, and ends up kind of backfiring. But that's the kind of play you want to be making. Obviously, without the dive, perhaps it's just Viper hitting the tower slowly. But yeah, the mentality is the right thing. We just want to be converging on these outer towers, and that's really important to do. That's really the only thing and the next thing, because obviously when you're this far ahead in lanes, you want to really be trying to restrict the map as much as possible, and the best way to restrict the map is just by taking towers, because they have less and less kind of security and defense throughout. So in scenarios like this, obviously I'm still looking to stack. I'm in that case we saw Phoenix dive as well, and this goes to another point as well. It's really important really to restrict the enemy's movement and vision. So taking out any kind of wards is vital really, because any kind of movement or any kind of plays that's going to be coming from it needs to be shut down, and that just all comes down to vision as well. So now obviously we're looking to kind of rotate and have some kind of pressure up top, and this goes back to kind of securing outer towers. They had some resources pulled in mid, and now we're looking kind of top, but AM wants to play bot because there's people top. Sometimes we see kind of free kills like this. It ended up being Undying was just trying to ward up camps to try and slow us down, which is fine, but if we end up kind of we're this far ahead, we shouldn't really be just sitting back and farming. We should be looking to kind of keep looking to push the tempo. In this case, obviously AM is farming their triangle, and he's sort of taking that farm away from them, always trying to not give them anything for free, and that's what's really, really important. So rotating mid, again looking for any remaining outer towers. The global science here is a bit better, happened, and the position was a bit better. Instead of the tier 2, it's the tier 1, and with our team here to respond to them, this is kind of every team fight that's really going to occur is going to be kind of like this one, where they end up working out for a little bit, but because we're so far ahead in terms of the golden experience, it kind of works out in our favour. In this case, obviously Underlord buys back, we end up killing kind of the Legion, and it's kind of an overall decent fight because AM joins up as well, and we take the tier 1. And this is kind of how we want this game to be playing, because we're keeping the tempo up now, keeping the pressure up. Because the worst thing that could happen is if we just sit on our side of the map and let them slowly come back into this game. So again, kind of keeping out lanes pushed out. For the large majority, like that, this isn't my role. But whenever there is a lane that needs to be pushed out, keep that in mind. Whether you're the support or whoever you are, keeping lanes in applies and keeps putting pressure on the enemy team. Again, we're going out to the next remaining outer tower, which is top, which is normally a bit strange, really. Normally the offlane tower is the one sort of taken first, but because we had our offlaner in the safe lane, it kind of worked out that way. Now we're smoking, again, trying to keep the tempo up also gives me a chance to ward even more aggressively. You're starting to sort of see how my wards have been kind of progressive, and that's really what you want to be doing as a support, where you're slowly progressing vision. it's kind of almost like American football where you're getting more and more yardage the further you get up the field, for example. Again, obviously they come and try to protect their vision, but when we're ahead, we don't want to give them anything, and that includes sort of killing them anytime they're available. So now, when all the remaining outer towers are gone, and by that I mean kind of most of, if not all, the tier ones, the AM is pressuring top as well. Now all we need to really be focusing on is making sure that lanes are pushed out so we can kind of keep playing and hemming them in, and keeping the map control completely reduced and restricted. Obviously, Viper TP's bot, pushes in bot, AM is still pressuring top as well, and so bit by bit, if you can see, just about, if I actually move my camera up properly, how they have like very little to farm. Obviously, it's like mid lane, but that's getting pushed in. We're pressuring from bot, and you just want to keep restricting and kind of squeezing the map as much as possible. That's what's kind of key here. So the next thing that's really going to be on our minds in the next few minutes or so is either making a rotation together as 5. Obviously, I have a smoke ready. In this case, they end up kind of catching the Legion top, and we end up killing here. And whenever we see an opportunity, Roche is definitely on the cards, or it should be. Because there's nothing the enemy team can do. Obviously, it depends on your lineup, whether you have kind of a decent Roche taking potential. In this case, we don't have the greatest Roche taking team. We have no Vlads. We don't have the greatest hitter either. And so just kind of taking towers is the next thing. Again, kind of taking away vision, taking away towers, bit by bit. And then obviously the next thing that we're going to be doing is taking Roche. I end up picking up a medallion, and when you're at this state of the game now, when you've progressed so much from lanes, once you take Roshan, it's a very simple kind of game plan after this now. The next thing really to do is, if you can ever take a team fight outside of base, you immediately take it. And if that doesn't kind of arise, then you just slowly push in all the lanes, take all the outer towers, and don't let them allow them to leave base. And then you can decide whether you want to slow push with the Aegis or wait for the next Aegis push with Cheese to break high ground. Sometimes you sort of see it where like the first Aegis secures you all the outer towers, and then the next Roche secures you the high ground and the Rex. In this case, we end up kind of killing the Phoenix here. Again, kind of any kind of fight or any kind of hero kill we can get outside of base is ideal. And they're kind of frantically looking to push out side lanes. Again, in this case, we end up picking off the Magnus as well, and I'm just trying to deward and take away as much vision as the enemy has. Again, you even see Undying trying to run down side lanes to push him out, and again, it's just kind of free kills from it. And in this case, it's sort of a perfect opportunity and scenario where we end up kind of killing one of the enemy team. And the carry as well, outside of base. And then now breaking high ground is very easy, and we can do it. We can do it with the first Aegis push, and indeed we do. So guys, that was kind of like a brief general overview of some of the points and some of the principles I wanted to really talk about. It was a bit scuffed in some areas, probably wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be, but I just wanted to get a video out there really talking about some general principles of the game, really. So just like I want to briefly quickly go over them. So the first thing, just remember, be wary of rotations and forfeits after you've won the lanes. Normally that will happen because the enemy team wants to get some kind of advantage, and they don't want to keep the status quo because of the fact that you're winning the side lanes. Then obviously just keep in mind identifying like the timings and the identity of both your team and the enemy team, and that comes really from draft in terms of how you want to be playing the game. And then it's obviously about pressuring multiple towers at once, securing and denying vision, and then converging remaining outer towers, and then securing Roche, and then the high ground from there. So hopefully that was something that you found interesting and found useful, guys. And there'll be more videos, hopefully a bit more better kind of prepared and scheduled going forward. But if you like, guys, please give it a like and subscribe, and comment down below, and hope to see you in the next one, guys. Till then, keep on grinding. Grease.